Welcome back here at Goldberg. Today I wanted to talk about the latest kerfuffle of the manosphere. It seems I step away for a couple of weeks, and there's some new dumpster fire that has erupted. More recently, it has largely been contained to the 21 studios. And for those of you who are not aware, there was the whole Rolly Tomaso controversy some years back. He was defenestrated. Then you had, of course, Donovan Sharp. You have had other Jack Murphy. He was taken down. More recently, wasn't it Bulldog Mindset? Then Jesse Lee Bootieson. That's a recent one. I think I saw him raging against John Anthony Lifestyle. And I'm not interested in these conflicts because I think they're really just a distraction. But as I had tried to point out some months back, it's interesting how, as much as they say things in these grandiose terms, there are exceptions. And I think that leads to a broader issue, which folks need to take seriously if they want to have these larger networks in the manosphere. If you look it up, Rolly Tomaso, who is here, he's got the pink hat, he's the fraud father now. But look at this, his older video where he's introduced by Dream Johnson is still up with almost 1 million views. And I had asked Johnson, why do you have his content up? We go down here, you've got State of the Manosphere, Rational Male, Positive Masculinity. I think there's at least one more that comes up on the first page, Rollo Tomasio and Women Are Attractive. I asked him, so why do you have his content up if you're kind of saying he's no good? He's, toxic, bad news. And this was his response in the video I'd made where he said that I don't want to remove speeches from our networks. I'm opposed to rewriting history or giving the impression that someone I currently disagree with didn't speak in the past. What's done is done. Now, I believe that he edited his comment because he initially said they're under review. And then he came up with this nonsensical justification, but he removed Donovan Sharp because Donovan Sharp said he was talking about beating women. Jack Murphy is a cuck. Rian Stone. Well, okay, these conditions. Richard Cooper, I didn't even know that he saw Richard Cooper as a fraud. So they're different situations. But, okay, you say they're different situations, but you tend to use a lot of equivocation and nuance, which in other respects, you believe in like these very, projection of strength. I'm the president. I'm gonna get rid of these people, as we'll see with a guy that we're going to talk about related to this video in just a second. So why the double standards? Are they other scumbags that can't be trusted? Because if you leave their content up and some man watches it, what if they get indoctrinated into the dark and deceptive ways of this fraud and betrayer, whoever it might be? Mind you, it's not just Rolly Tomaso, and it's not just me looking at this or recognizing it. We have a video here of Jesse Lee Bootiesworth, How to Rebuild the American Man. This was from, it was published June 19th, 2022, and he says at the top, 21 Studios has severed all ties with Jesse Lee Bootieson as of 6/20/22. Official statement. So why post the video? You make the statement, yet your video is still up and monetized. I smell grifting. It's sort of with the Rollo Tomasi, with almost 1 million views on that video. Is it that you don't want to take it down because you have a contractual obligation? Are you making money off of it, possibly? I don't care if you are, mind you, but it's like, why can't you just be consistent? Leave all the content up for the purpose of history, whether they're cucks or not, because at some level you accepted them, you welcome them on board, or take them all down. Have consistency. But this sort of like wishy-washiness is one of the reasons why a lot of people don't take the manosphere seriously. And then the subject of controversy is Ivan Throne. He is a guy, I read the 9 Laws, I didn't really care for it. It was way too long and just super dense. But his speeches at 21 Studios were some of the best, I thought. And in the same fashion, you want to remove those videos which have kind of inspirational, the guy overcoming his issues with deafness, but now you're trying to defenestrate him. And let's look at the breakdown by Dream Johnson on this question. He was invited to speak at a 2022 summit. He says, In my professional experience, I worked with them. I have invited for speakers. They've been any number of different folks, including FBI special agents. This is really hilarious because just a bit down here, I am an objectivist and atheist. Why is an objectivist associating with FBI agents? I mean, it's just ironic, honestly. I know you're going to say, "Oh, it's irrelevant." I just think it's funny when people call themselves libertarians or even anarchists. I've seen people claim that and then be like, "Support the police." Like, wait, what? Okay. Well, he was for a long time. He was a speaker. He was respectful, professional, that kind of thing, referring to Ivan Throne. But then apparently he gave a speech that had objectionable content in there. Out of alignment with other speakers and presentations throughout the 16-year history, it was a cause of concern for many people. The content was alarming and extreme. I believe not protected by state or federal law, including the First Amendment. You're an objectivist and you're concerned about the First Amendment and state and federal laws. You're an objectivist. Just trying to make this understand a little bit better. Had I been in the conference room during the speech, I would have ended the presentation immediately and have Ivan escorted off the property by law enforcement. Really? You're an objectivist and you'd call the cops to solve a problem between two men. That's hilarious. This relates to the speech and also this book that Ivan Throne came out with called Age of Militants. I haven't seen the speech, I haven't read the book, but I can imagine what's probably in it. And he says they're not protected. They probably are protected by state and federal laws, by the First Amendment. It's just that there are consequences to what you say. And this is something that many folks, manosphere, right-wingosphere, they don't understand. And it's to their great detriment. As the founder and leader of these events, in the strongest terms possible, I 100% disavow the content of this speech. It will not be published by 21 Studios under any circumstances. Really? So what happened to all that free speech and liberty in the Constitution? Why can't you just, why can't you just give it to someone to upload so people can hear what he said? But I guess we're equivocating when it comes to the Constitution and the Republic. Not surprising. This speech was profoundly disrespectful to our events, our attendees. He violated several serious boundaries. Let's see down here. Regarding the Manosphere movement, as first president of the Manosphere by executive order, I hereby declare Robert Teasdale, aka Ivan Throne, formally excommunicated with zero chance or pardon or redemption. Yeah, this is very extreme rhetoric. You want this like over the top. You're shilling and going, oh, state and federal laws, but then you're saying I'm going to excommunicate this person and not associate with. Like, it just seems kind of weird, like the disconnect, honestly. His performance and authorship of the new book were profoundly disrespectful and treasonous to the Manosphere community. Deeply unmanly, dishonorable, and misguided. He's brought great shame to me and the Manosphere, and his legacy as a handicapped public speaker. May God have mercy on your soul, Ivan. So I say this because it's a good illustration of the type of, exaggerated rhetoric, the over-the-topness. And you'll see much of this in the Manosphere, people making these grandiose claims, using Viking, Templar, Spartan imagery, talking about fighting for freedom and standing up against the machine. He frequently, Dream Johnson, uses war, conflict, battle of this in his talks, in his content. And somehow people think that no one is responding to that as kind of a continuing narrative, that it's all self-contained in this nice liberal playpen, right? Now, let's take a look at his website. You guys are going to say, oh, this is all about Anthony Dream Johnson. No, I wish the dude well. I'm just trying to point out how there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect. And this is a bigger issue in the Manosphere, as we'll talk about in just a second. Before his meteoric rise to the Manosphere presidency, he was an aspiring 17-year-old or aspiring pickup artist and community organizer. It's kind of funny because a lot of people in the right wing, which is largely not separate from the manosphere. They mocked Obama years ago for being a community organizer, not having any experience. But let's keep going down here. Considered a radical even in his own community. Even in his own community, I assume that means the manosphere, or does that mean his local community? But that doesn't typically mean that you're some moderate president guy, just everyone get along. You're saying you're a radical by your own people. If that means the manosphere, that means that you're pretty radical. But he's a unifying force for progress in the manosphere, even though you're always having these little cat fights with other men, or at least recently you are. He pioneered rebuilding the American patriarchy. Okay, this is a very important point I'll get to in a second. He's called for the total abolishment of feminism in Western culture while mandating fair and equal treatment for men and women. So, rebuilding American patriarchy. Patriarchy does not work with equal rights for men or women. If you were actually honest, you would understand this, dude. Patriarchy worked because women were to some degree disenfranchised. And if you're saying you're going to abolish feminism, laying aside the women that would say, oh, feminism gives them rights, let's say that that's in the dustbin. But even if you're saying abolishing, does that mean that total repeal and replacement of feminism, does that mean you can't talk about feminism, you can't be a feminist, you can't be like a feminist organization? Because that's kind of violating freedoms. That would definitely violate the First Amendment and state and federal laws if you were trying to do that, unless I guess you change all those laws, which means why are you so obsessed with following them? He wants to end the feminist war on motherhood and the family. Again, the war on the... he said that feminism, a national security threat. These are very exaggerated words, little boy. This is stuff that people might take as going, oh, we need to take action, right? There are guys that will do that, perhaps regrettably. And you have seen that. This is not tied specifically to Anthony Johnson, but you have to understand how rhetoric does impact people. You saw that with the whole kerfuffle at the Capitol. There are people facing years in prison and felony records because they believed all these psychotic, dishonest conservative talking heads and politicians who had no intention of putting themselves on the line. And probably many of them won't face any consequences. Oh, it's irony, bro. It's just free speech. There are the true believers. Most movements, there's like 75 to 80% who, they're just consumers having a good time. Then you've got the, 15 to 20% that are basically into, they're like, oh, well, if everything was right, I'll do something, but I'm not going to, put anything on the line. Then you got the last percent, the very small percent that are the true believers. And those are the ones that they might be low status people or whatever. They're like, oh, I'll do it because I'm going to gain the respect of men. I'll gain the respect of, I'll be a hero for the country. The nation will thank me. And those are the ones you got to be careful of. It's happened in the manosphere before. You have the kids who go ER. That's a little bit more, on the fringe side, but you had the MRA lawyer who went after the judge. You had that nutcase in Colorado, and I think it was unfair. People tried to associate him with Anthony. I don't think that's not valid from what I've been able to gather. But the point is, they do pick up on the same signals, and they start imagining themselves in this whole world, which, if people had a different messaging, might not happen. It's not like a guarantee that someone's going to do something, but when they're constantly juiced up by the stuff they hear and they become frustrated because they don't feel they're going to be able to live the life that has been kind of advertised as this fantasy, the trad wife, the great restored country, they might go like, oh, I've got to do something. Is that hard to see? I would go further and say that in a lot of the manosphere, this is basically a standard issue. There are a lot of folks, and it doesn't matter how they identify. I would say all the way from the red pillars, the PUAs, all the way down to the dark, musty grotto filled with silicon inhabited by TFM. These are all fundamentally failed data provider strategists. And that's why even if they claim that they're just going their own way, they're individualists, they're libertarians, they're so invested in these culture wars, in these, controlling what women do, complaining about what women are trying to pursue, because fundamentally they want that model. They want to be able to come home to the wife. They don't want to have to worry so much about looks maxing or being high status. They just want to be in that, okay, now I can be calm again. Now I can be henpecked by a woman, but at least everything's secure. Those dudes, they inhabit those viewpoints, right? I mean, even recently we saw the ITV special on Hammerhand, who I've got nothing against Hammerhand, but it was kind of interesting because they're discussing this OnlyFans model who makes millions of dollars a month, and she's been with this X number of guys, and Hammerhand's going, "Oh yeah? Well, what happens when she gets to be older? She wants to have a family. No man's gonna want that." Yes, they will. Look at Kim Kardashian. Look at Harper Hempel, that chick who went viral. She was dating some NBA player or whatever he was. An attractive woman, even a homely woman, will have options because of the environment we live in, especially in the Western world. So I don't buy that whole thing. The reason why even MGTOWs and PUAs comment on these culture war issues is because, like I said, they want to have the wife. They want to be able to come home. Everything's kosher. They don't have to worry about the future. Like, what am I going to be? It's a nice insulation from the harsh truths about living in the world. And it's just something you have to appreciate. Even his associate, what was it, Chronic? Didn't he get in trouble with his suits allegedly? Now, at one point he said he wasn't going to stream anymore, but now he's back streaming. So is that they just showed up and said, okay, make sure you get off your stream by bedtime? Or maybe it was there's been some random speculation. Maybe there was a deal made about information. You gotta be honest. There are actors out there trying to see the manosphere as a problem. And it's exactly because of the rhetoric, but also some of the guys that take it too far. So I would say to guys like Johnson, if you just want to have a business, you want to have a chill network, that's cool. But you need to start putting in place not that little disclaimer thing, we don't agree with all the views. You need to start saying, this is what we expect. You cannot say XYZ, because that gives you some layer of protection. If you're not vetting people, which you obviously didn't vet Jack Murphy, you made the choice to team up with Rolly Tommaso. You have other people, Jesse Lee Bootison. What's going to happen eventually is that you're going to be associated or potentially held accountable for people that you associate with. And if even it's something like a lawsuit, I tried to warn him back in the spring with the whole, he got angry at Catboy over the Second Amendment and you can't bring guns to that event. Well, again, there's always someone trying to target you. And if they know you have money, a lawsuit can do a lot of damage. So just try to be smarter is what I would say to these guys. Be smarter and decide. If you believe in all the brinkmanship, like you want to take it that far, that's one thing. But if you just want to have your nice enterprise and ride off into the sunset, then start doing quality control, because there's a lot of weirdos out there who they get inspired and they get pumped up over stuff where you're just saying, no, it's irony. It's just the internet, man. But they're taking it as this is their destiny. So just try to calm down and maybe tone down what you say. It'll help, I think. At least in a small way, it will be very beneficial.